Hello and welcome to another episode of Discover with Spinetti. Today's February the 20th. It's 9:23 p.m. It's a lovely Tuesday. Today was lovely weather. Today we're talking about the four most important questions that you will ask about yourself. More specifically for today's podcast is the first of those questions, which is, are you a hero or a victim in your own story? Are you a hero or a victim in your own story? This is probably the most important question that you will ask about yourself. Are you a hero or are you a victim in your own story? Why is that important? Because Socrates, who died, by the way, in February 15th, 399 BC, so this was like literally 5 days ago, eons, many, many years ago, but this month, as a matter of fact, just a few days, he said, a life unexamined is not worth living. So if you're parading around, prancing around in life, or moping around in life, whichever character you decide to embody, if you're any of those characters, kind of just aimlessly wandering around, not knowing what you're doing, then life to you and to anyone else doesn't have much of a meaning. And what is a life that doesn't have much of a meaning? As the statement would go, it is pretty meaningless. So today we are talking about the first question of the four most important questions that you're going to be asking about yourself. Now, I'm going to put this up. This is actually adopted from a book called The Five Most Important Questions You Will Ask About Your Organization by Peter Drucker. So I was reading this book and I said to myself, wouldn't it be interesting if this was kind of reworded so that it fits your narrative, like it fits a person's narrative, so that they can not only understand their organization better, but understand something that is even more important than their organization, which is themselves. And then I started to reflect on the five questions that Peter Drucker came up with. And I said to myself, one of those questions seems to be redundant. And so I squished them together into one question and I made it into the four most important questions that you'll ever ask about yourself. Probably in some other podcast, I will discuss this book itself. Actually, you know what? Might as well show it to you. It's right here. Can you see it? Five most important questions you'll ever ask about your organization. And I came up with the four most important questions that you'll ever ask about yourself. And today we're talking about the first most important question. And this is going to blow your mind. And I'll tell you why. So these are the four most important questions you'll ever ask about yourself. The first is what is your mission? In other words, why are you alive? Cool fact, by the way, you can create this and you cannot be wrong. You can literally create your own mission in your life. And what I'm going to discuss today is the principle of creating your own life and how you can create your own life based on the principles of a story. So I'm actually going to discuss with you how to create a really interesting story, because your life is a story. And if you know how to write your own story in an interesting way, guess what that makes your life? That makes your life incredibly interesting. If you know the recipes of an interesting story, which I'm about to teach you, I'm about to teach you the recipes of an interesting story. And if you know those recipes, there are four recipes of an interesting story, then you can create an incredible life, can't you? I know. You're holding on to the pants for your seat, if that's what they say. The seat of your pants. All right. The second question that you're going to be asking yourself, the four of the most important questions, is who are your friends? And as you and I both know, that you are the sum of the five friends that you hang around with. You are the sum of the five, your net worth is the sum of the five people that you hang around with. Your intellect is the sum of the intellect of the five people you hang around with. You can literally apply this to anything. Your fitness level is the fitness level of the average of the fitness level of the 5 people that you hang around with. Your mood is the mood of the 5 people, the average of the 5 people that you hang around with. It is literally like the thing, right? So be careful what you read, be careful what you watch on your phone, be careful who you talk to, be careful who you hang around with consistently, because those are going to form your life. And that's basically what is the topic of today's podcast. So that is the second. The third is, what result are you looking for from your life? And lastly, which is another moment of blowing your mind, lastly is, what is your plan? Now, beyond what is your plan is actually, this is a very exciting part to discuss in another podcast, is besides what your plan is to accomplish the mission, is what is the contingency to the plan? So if, for instance, so this is taken from Admiral McRaven's philosophy of making plans. And he has a binary way of making decisions. So if A happens, then you do B. If C happens, then you do D. If E happens, then you do F. And so on and so forth. So if you are planning your life, let's say you're planning your life, and you have a binary decision-making process in order for you to attain your mission, well, you have to understand that if you do it this way, you know what? I'm not going to tell you, because I'm going to keep this for another podcast. Let's continue this podcast. And so these are the 4 most important questions that you're going to be asking about yourself with regards to your life. Moving on. The mission. Your mission is to be the hero of your own story. Your mission is to come up with a story so good that you don't want to live anyone else's story, because you've come up with your own story. And as this slide shows you, there are 4 main components of a story. 4. And if you were to analyze any movie, any story, you will literally find these 4 components, main components in that story. And if you understand these 4 main components, then you're going to literally be able to carve your own story. And not only that, you'll be able to give your story meaning, which is something phenomenal. And I'll discuss that in a second. So what are the 4 different aspects of any kind of story? Well, they are this: a victim, a villain, a hero, and a guide. 4 components of every single story. Now, since this is your story, there's no sense in you picking any of those characters except one of them, which is the hero. Hence the slide, mission, hero. So you are the hero of your own story. Now, the thing is that every single day we encounter 4 of these, all these 4 characters in ourselves every single day, because in a single day we feel sorry for ourselves. So we're the victim, sadness. The second is we feel vengeful. We want to get back at whoever did us injustice. 3, we feel very empowered and we feel very confident in ourselves, ready to take on whatever challenge that just got presented to us. And 4, someone else calls us and asks us for advice, and so we become their guide. Now, in coming up with a story for yourself, you have to choose to be the hero. Now, the hero doesn't mean that you're automatically capable and you're strong. Being the hero means you are a victim in the process of transformation. So you're not in a static zone of victimhood. You're not a victim per se, but you are someone who's been quote unquote victimized. And so now you are going through a process, and then you're going to transform. Let me show you what I mean. This is what I mean. So as you can see here, you have the examples that I have there is Superman, Batman, and Wolverine. Now, if you were to think of Superman, Batman, and Wolverine, Superman was orphaned, right? He was sent from his parents as the planet was being attacked. They took him, they put him in a ship, and then they sent him out towards Earth. And the planet got destroyed. Batman, same, well, not same thing, but Batman, his parents got killed. Wolverine, his dad gets killed. So they're all orphaned. They're all victims in their own story. But what makes a hero, and this is the thing, this is the main component here, is that you coming up with your own story of your life is that you cannot be the victim. You cannot stay as the victim of your story. And here's the reason why. If someone were to come up to you and were to say, I'm coming up with this story, but the story seems really boring, and I need you to put some juice into it, the first thing you're going to analyze is you're going to see, is the victim remain a victim? Is there a challenge for the victim? And does the victim actually face the challenge and try to overcome the challenge by not giving up? Because that is the definition of a hero. A victim is someone that you sympathize in a story, right? If you're watching a movie and you have a victim, you feel sorry for the victim. The hero is someone that you cheer on. You know, you see them going through challenges, but you cheer them on. So you cannot be the victim of your story. It just doesn't make sense. It's not a story. It's boring. It has no meaning. The fastest way to ruin any story is for the victim to give up, because the victim thinks to himself or herself that they're doomed. No matter what they do, nothing's going to improve. And that is the mental state of a victim. So now that you know the 4 different components of a story and what you have to do in order for you to become the hero of your story, is that you must accept the process. And in order for you to accept the process, then you will become transformed into the hero that you are meant to be in your own story. So this here is the really cool aspect of giving your life meaning, is that any frustrating situation, any whatsoever, if you give that frustrating situation a meaning, automatically frustration disappears. Give any kind of frustrating moment in your life meaning, that frustration disappears automatically. Here's why. When you are frustrated, what is the first thing that you say? I can't understand why this. How in the heck does this, when you are expressing frustration, you are literally expressing a lack of understanding of that situation. So if you give it meaning, now it means something to you. Frustration goes away, you move on, you deal with it. So by giving your life meaning, you give your life, you turn down the frustrations of your life because you've given yourself your life meaning. So if you're facing hardship, the first thing for you to think of is, this is meant to strengthen me. The reason why I'm going through hardship is because I am the hero of my story and I'm meant to become stronger. If you're experiencing sadness, you feel sad, you feel depressed, it's because you're meant to reflect. You're meant to dig deep inside your soul and really reflect and really turn things around. If you're tired and you feel low energy, this is a test of your willpower. How badly do you want your goal? How badly do you want it? Do you want it really badly, or do you kind of want it? Do you sort of kind of want it? And if you give any kind of component in your life a meaning, automatically now your story becomes interesting because you remain the hero of the story rather than the victim. Now, here's something I just touched on, which is, if you want to ruin a perfectly good story, you want to take a story and you want to ruin it, the best way to do it is to play the victim. Because playing the victim means that you are automatically doomed to whatever challenges that were presented to you. Now, playing the hero means that you are never going to give up. Now, if you were to picture, for instance, Superman, right? All the struggles and all the challenges that he faces, as he grows up, people see him as weird, and he's ostracized from society, and he's kind of cast away. No one wants to be his friend. No one wants to play with him. Same thing with Batman. Same thing with Wolverine. They all go through their own lonely moments before people start to like them, before people start to congregate around them. This is the story of a hero. So if you are feeling that way, if you're feeling lonely, if you're feeling like this life is very challenging, good. It's actually really good because you are forming yourself into the hero that you're supposed to be. So don't back down from the challenge. Don't back down from being the person who's supposed to be persevering, who's supposed to be strong, who's supposed to be capable. How else are you supposed to test yourself? But life should be testing you so that you can prove to life that you are the hero of your own story. So you are the whole point here, okay? And to literally wrap this thing up is that you are the author of your own story. You are literally the author of your own story. So you get to write your story, which brings me to my next point, which is something that Viktor Frankl, who wrote the book, it's a very, very popular book. You probably know about it. He wrote the book called The Meaning of Life. And Man's Search for Meaning. My bad. The book is called Man's Search for Meaning. So in this book by Viktor Frankl called Man's Search for Meaning, he talks about his logotherapy, and he talks about how he was able to remain steadfast in the most harshest situations. So his story is this. He is a psychiatrist, and so he was working on his manuscript and his paperwork with the logotherapy, okay, because he came up with this way of treating patients. And so when in 1939, when the Nazis kind of invaded, what they did was that they took away his manuscript. His wife, that was pregnant at the time with his unborn, she sewed the manuscript into his coat so that it doesn't get stolen. Well, what happened was is that when he was taken away and his wife and him were separated, they took the coat and they took away the manuscript from him. So then he found out is they killed his wife with his unborn child, and they killed his parents as well. So he was borderline suicidal. Now, the thing that made him remain steadfast is his theory of logotherapy, which is to give meaning to life, to give meaning to life's circumstances. And he says this, and this is the whole point of me telling you the story, is that he says, everything can be taken from you except one of man's last freedoms, which is the freedom to respond to any given situation. And when you are absorbed in that freedom, when you recognize that you still have the freedom to choose, and the last choices that you have to make is how you respond or your attitude towards the situation, then you always remain free. And you always remain in control, and then you can actually give meaning to the situations in your life. So that's one of his principles of logotherapy. And if you haven't read his book, I'd recommend it. And this here is from Don Miller's book. And he actually comes up with something really cool. And what he does is that he reads his own eulogy. Okay. And for those of you that don't know what a eulogy is, it's something that someone reads when you die. They read it and they say how amazing of a person you were and what your story was and all that stuff. So what he does is that he writes his eulogy of what happens, or if he dies a year from now, what his eulogy is going to look like 5 years from now and 10 years from now. And so when he does this, he's actually creating his own story. He's creating what his story is going to be if he dies a year from now, or if he dies 5 years from now, or if he dies 10 years from now. I don't know about you, but that's incredible. Because if you are literally writing your own story, and you're reading it consistently, let's say you do it once a month or whatever, then that really drives home the point that you're the author of your own story. Sometimes, the story doesn't go exactly the way that you write it, but the majority of the story will, as long as you have some kind of script. Not everyone follows the script, but they follow the outline of the script so that, you know exactly what direction you're heading into. So this is the challenge of this podcast. The challenge of this podcast is for you to write your own eulogy 1, 5, and 10 years from today. So write it today for a eulogy for 1, 5, and 10 years. And look, this isn't meant to cause you any kind of depression or anything like that. I mean, let's face it. Okay, if you're watching this podcast, more than likely, you're a grown adult and you understand the nature of life. we're all going to, at some point in time, we're going to die. I mean, let's face it here. Okay. So why not make the best of your life? And how can you make the best of your life if you can't even plan what your life is going to look like on a sheet of paper? So this is your chance. Take this as a challenge. Challenge yourself to write a eulogy of yourself or for yourself, of you, for 1 year, 5 years, and 10 years from today. Thank you so much for listening and tuning into this podcast. I hope you benefited. So this is the first important question of the 4 questions that you'll ever ask about your life. I'll be covering the other 3 tomorrow, the day after, and the day after that. So look forward to that. And as always, stay well and always keep smiling.